obviously most of you know, but I'll just reiterate. At once a month, we've been doing these what we're calling digital advance sessions of the Microchurch Conference. So, the Microchurch Conference is this every other year family reunion of microchurch networks nationally and internationally, like little delegations and teams from a lot of microchurch tribes around the world get together to champion and normalize the smaller way and to learn from each other and to encourage each other. It was sort of born out of so often the microchurch people would go to conferences built around disciple making or mission or that kind of stuff, and the idea of simple church or microchurch would be one breakout out of 128 breakouts in like the third floor of some, like a mile away or something like that. And it was like, what if we went to a conference where simple churches and microchurches were like the main thing that everybody was doing? It wasn't like this weird thing that a handful of people doing. It was like, it where we wouldn't be feel or be seen as like strange or experimental, but a viable alternative operating system for the church in the West, which is, by the way, we all know, not something new, but the recovery of something very, very old. And so we thought, instead of waiting until March to see all these people, what if we just had like one advanced session per month where we just invited one of our friends on the call to just share from their story, their experience as a practitioner around ideas that are critical and nascent to the life of microchurch leaders and network directors, and spark conversation among practitioners where we can learn together, encourage one another. And so this month, that's our good friend Steven Barr, and I'll let him share more about where he is and the type of ministry work that he's been doing. He's for many years not just been a good friend, but a hero and an example for so many of us. I think the work that they do is so creative, and it opens up the imagination for so many missionaries and church leaders around what's possible. And so I think their story is compelling, and beyond just their story, I think the specific topic that he's going to be able to talk about today is really important for us. And so he's planning to share for a bit about that. But like previous calls, this isn't meant to be and Stephen will tell you, this is not meant to be like a one-way conversation. I think we're always hungry for dialogue and questions, and so he is going to share maybe for 20, 25, 30 minutes, but we are going to have an extended time of Q&A at the end. And the Q&A always goes best if, like, during his time talking, if you're like thinking of your questions, and when you have them, instead of waiting until the end, just put them in the chat. Like real time, as soon as you have a question, just put it in the chat. We won't answer it right away, but then when we get to the Q&A time, we probably already have like 3 or 4 or 5 questions populated in the chat that just sort of kick off our conversation. And so, yeah, just be thinking critically, be in a curious posture about how you want to learn or understand, or things that you want to ask Stephen, and get all the angles of some of the stuff that he's sharing. So let me pray for us and for Stephen, and then hand it over to him to facilitate a conversation with us. So Lord, thanks for these friends, thanks for these leaders, and the gift of an hour together in the middle of a Friday. For some of us, it's the afternoon. Some of us, it might be the morning, depending on where we're at in the world. But yeah, just to have the gift of an hour with people that are like-minded, that we can be ourselves with, we can be encouraged by, we can learn from. And so this isn't something as simple as a Zoom room and some note taking. God, we acknowledge that you're here. Your presence is here with us. You're indwelling the conversation, and that you want to speak to us. You want to speak to us individually and as a collective. And so we attune our ears to you. We want to hear from you, encounter you. we want you to be the light into our path. And so show us some steps maybe in this conversation as we learn from Stephen and from each other. It's in your name. Amen. Amen.
Wow. Thanks. Thanks, Lucas. I'm going to start off with a parable. You're going to get to know me and you're going to get to know our story, but I'd like to start off with a parable that's going to kind of paint the picture for all of us today. And I want you to think about a hillside. And on one side of the hillside, there lived a man, and he decided to plant a garden. And so he took some special seeds and he cared for them. He stored them at just the right temperature and waited for them to be just right for the planting season. Then he went out and he carved a nice rectangle on his hillside and formed rows and put each seed lovingly into the ground and covered them up and got it, and everything looking perfect. And so he was excited about the garden that he was going to plant. And after he planted, he decided to take a walk, and he walked around to the other side of the hill. And on the other side of the hill was a woman who was also planting. And she had a similar bag of seeds, but instead of planting them, she was casting them into the wind, just throwing them wherever. And the man was like, "What are you doing? What those seeds have not been cared for. Those seeds have not been nurtured. You don't know where those seeds are going to end up." And she says, "The wind knows where to carry those seeds." And so he kind of walked off frustrated. And a couple of seasons passed. And after a couple of seasons, the garden on his side of the hill grew so beautiful, lovely flowers, perfect rows, and he weeded out all of the stuff. He even built a white fence around the garden so nothing bad could ever enter into it. And even people would drive past his property and admire the flowers. They weren't allowed to pick them, but they could admire his flowers. And so one day he's walking around to the other side of the hill again, and he notices where the woman had thrown the seeds was a vast hillside of wildflowers. And she was out there standing, and he said, "I thought those seeds would not survive." And she said, "Many didn't survive, but those that did became something no garden could ever hold." I'll just say, for those who have ears, let them hear. And we'll start there. What if fruitfulness begins not with planting a garden, but with releasing seeds into the wind and trusting Jesus with what grows? Well, that's what this is going to be about. This whole session is my desire for us is to awaken your imagination to new possibilities. But I want you to understand that as we move in, as I share some of this, I'm sharing this from experience, 14 years of experience in the Disney company. And I want to make sure that you understand we are always in an experiment in the state of becoming. Castmember Church is always in flux, always adapting. We are in a culture that is constantly shifting. So I'm not saying that this is a better church planting model. I do think that what I'm going to talk about today is a better starting point. Maybe that's it. But in any case, our mission field started out as Walt Disney World. 74,000 employees, 47 square miles of Disney property. And little by little, God helped our ministry to become more and more specific, to the point where really Castmember Church exists, if you've ever been to Walt Disney World, in Epcot. In fact, not just in Epcot, but in the 11 countries called World Showcase. 11 different countries, 11 different cultures, 11 different contexts. And so we have had to learn how to reveal Jesus to a vast group of people, all in one specific location. And we've learned over the last 14 years, well, we call it long-term proximity, that when you are immersed in that kind of a world, it will reveal unseen assumptions. And what I mean by that is we came to Orlando to plant a normal church, an attractional church. It was going to be, I went through all the church planting boot camps and all the stuff that probably many of us have experienced. And the more we immersed ourselves in the Disney culture, the more we realized that very little of what we were trained for would work. And so what I'm going to be sharing with you is that journey, is the story. And this is what we're discovering. Okay. Some of this may not apply to you. Some of it may even challenge you. And that's okay. That's okay. But this is what we are discovering working in a global culture with multiple different contexts. We've had to learn how to function in a way that connects with everyday people. And so like I said, we started out as a normal church plant. And the idea is we would gather people, would teach scripture, the typical idea. I had this vision for a Disney style church, so to speak. And first of all, we learned very quickly that God can do many things, but he can't out Disney, because I don't think he wants to. But there was this idea we wanted to become an oasis for Christians that worked at Walt Disney World. And what we ended up with were consumers. They were seeking refuge, but they didn't want to be challenged to be the church outside. They were wanting comfort without being moved into the world and having a kingdom influence where they were. And this was very frustrating for my wife and I, who started this, because we wanted to see people who didn't know Jesus. And that we thought the easiest way would be to empower people who already knew Jesus to go in. But what had happened is so many of these young people, and it's our church, our average age in Castmember Church is 24, 25 years old. A lot of the young people that first started being a part of our church came from youth groups back home. And what they were looking for was their youth group back home. They weren't looking to become mature disciples or disciple makers. And so we would have people come in, and then when they saw that we were encouraging them to think beyond their own spiritual growth, but how to have a kingdom influence elsewhere, they would leave. And one of the most common things I would hear is, well, I'm looking for more of a more normal church. I had one girl, sweet girl, grew up in a Christian home, went to Christian school, K through 12, graduated from a very reputable Christian university. And one day she sat down with me after having been a part of what we were doing for a few weeks. She said, I just wanted you to know I'm going to be stepping away from Castmember Church. And okay, what is there a reason? She says, yeah, I don't believe I'm called to make disciples. Now, you and I know that the chances are there was, first of all, I thought maybe she had a page missing from her Bible. I don't know. There was something that didn't seem to connect. But what it was she didn't know how. She had never had it modeled for her. And this was the typical thing that we experienced over and over and over again. And no matter how much we would try to lower the bar to make it easier for people to learn how to invest in one person who didn't know Jesus, these young people that came from a church background could not take that step, regardless of how small we made that step. They wanted to be fed, they wanted to be nurtured, they wanted to be cared for, but they didn't see themselves as being light in darkness. And so it really there came a reckoning for Castmember Church, that if we were going to reach lost people, we were going to have to do something different. Something about Disney, in a place like Disney where people already belong to a story and a team, gathering them away often worked against formation. So the idea of saying, let's be the church away from Disney, that's great for people who want to escape the mission, but it's not healthy for those that want to function in the mission. So we identified 4 underlying problems as we started to figure out how we were going to make this shift. And these may hit home with you. I hope they do. But these were the 4 things that we recognized that were an issue. Number 1 was attraction. The idea of come and receive becomes the primary posture. It feeds consumerism. So when you have this idea of come and receive, you start landing church hoppers, church shoppers, and church poppers, and you end up feeding a consumer culture. That's if you're focusing on attracting people. The second thing was accumulation. The idea of faith is centered around the attendance rather than the presence in the mission field. The emphasis shifts to the weekly gathering and not everyday life. The third thing was information. And I would say information is like discipleship is measured by knowledge rather than embodiment out in the world. We accumulate knowledge, we accumulate, but it never gets lived out. And finally, the fourth one is control. Faithfulness is confused with predictability. If you're a visionary, if you're a church planter, if you're a leader, we all have a vision for an outcome. We do. That's the hope. We want to see something that God has put in our minds and in our hearts. But we become so focused on it that we start controlling it instead of trusting the Spirit. And so what happens is these 4 things: attraction, accumulation, information, and control. If we repeat these over and over, we're going to create a culture that is not healthy. All of these 4 things could be good things, and they can be with great intentions. But if we carry them forward unexamined, they quietly reshape what we aim for and what we produce. So we decided to make a big shift. And this was the scariest thing I think we've ever done, at least in my years of ministry. We decided to stop planting the church. In fact, we removed ourselves from social media. We disappeared. We still have a website, but we removed ourselves from social media, and we decided we're not going to plant the church. We're going to start planting the kingdom. Jesus spent most of his ministry talking about the kingdom. And the church is an outgrowth of the kingdom. And I'll get into that a little bit here. And the last thing, we stopped planting the church, started planting the kingdom, and we would focus specifically on the harvest. And that was a huge shift for us. I'd only been part of attractional churches. I only knew how to do Sundays. And so we had to learn, and we had to immerse ourselves in the harvest. Best thing we ever did. I love the harvest. I love people who don't know Jesus. But by recentering our aim, we discovered something. Jesus never reduced the kingdom to the church. He entrusted the church with revealing the kingdom. So the kingdom is at work beyond what we're doing. Jesus is at work before us, behind us, around us. He's always working. And as missional people, we have the opportunity to reveal it, to point it out, to show people where he's already working in their lives. So planting the kingdom in the harvest meant we would begin where people were already living their lives, where cast members were already functioning and doing. So rather than inviting them to something we were doing, we would go to where they were. And fortunately, here at Walt Disney World, they all live in a very similar area called cast housing, thousands and thousands of apartments all in one area. We decided that we would plant presence and faithfulness. It would not be about witnessing and all. We would just simply become the best friends to people in the harvest. And we would trust Jesus to plant the church. Because when the kingdom starts to stir up, things start to emerge. But we also wanted to make space for the Spirit to do whatever he wants to do in that environment. So we have seen much more than Castmember Church. We've seen other kingdom expressions emerge. And so things that if we had just planted a church, a garden, we would have just kept it within that fence. But when you think beyond, when you give the Spirit room to work outside of the blinders that we often so easily put on for the church, the kingdom expands, the kingdom expresses itself in beautiful ways. So what we've learned is kingdom planting does not begin with reproducing a form. We don't, there's no model for this. And because God is so unique, he expresses himself so beautifully. We like to say that Castmember Church is made up of completely unique people, completely different gifts, incredibly different talents, diverse like you wouldn't believe, but everyone looks like Jesus. So we don't start with a form. We allow the Spirit to reveal the form. And it begins by releasing men and women into their God-designed expression of the kingdom, wherever it may lead them, even if it leads them away from Castmember Church, even if it takes them to another place, another location, which is pretty normal for us to see people move on to other places. I was just telling Lucas, 95% of Castmember Church is actually in Europe because of these cast members who come here and then they go home. And so you're releasing the kingdom in incredible ways. So the goal is not we have not wanted to reproduce a template or even a form, but to release people into that God-designed kingdom expression that he's designed them for. So we shifted from church planting to kingdom planting. We shifted from convincing believers to connecting with the harvest. I don't know about you, but I always find myself so often frustrated trying to convince believers about the smaller way, about the missional way. And it so often feels like you're talking to a wall. And so maybe for me, it was, well, stop doing that and focus where the harvest is plentiful, but the laborers are few. And finally, we went from information about Jesus to relational so they could meet Jesus. They could see his hands and feet and his voice at work in their lives through the relationships that we formed. So in a place, Disney, where people already live in teams, they tell stories and they serve guests, relational discipleship isn't a strategy. It's the only language that makes sense. And I think that's not just true for Disney, because we are so immersed in multiple cultures that relationship is the key that turns any culture. The up close and personal, the dinner tables, the living rooms, those are the places where those hearts can become unlocked. And so the language of relational discipleship, I think, is a must. And so what I'm going to do, before we open it up for questions here, because I'm already seeing some wonderful things happening, I want to finish with a parable. One of the things that we do in Castmember Church is we speak in parables. We looked at the way of Jesus and realized that he communicated the kingdom through parables, principles, paradoxes, patterns, and practices. And that is how we communicate the kingdom. That's how we pass on what Jesus has given to us to others. So those are the things that work around our dinner tables and work around our living rooms. But I want to finish with a parable, and then I'll go wherever you all want to go. Two boys were standing on a beach at the edge of a vast ocean. And in front of each boy was a barrel. And inside those barrels were fish. One boy had a barrel of fish in front of him. The other boy had a barrel of fish in front of him. And what they were doing is they would cast their fishing poles into each other's barrels. And they would catch a fish and they'd reel it out, and then they'd catch a fish. I've got one. And then they put it in their own barrel. The other boy would cast his line into his friend's barrel, and he'd catch a fish, pull it out, and put it into his barrel. And they did this all day. And so people walking by would see these boys fishing out of barrels, and they'd laugh. They go, "What are they doing? Don't they see the entire ocean out there filled with fish?" And one of the boys heard the comment, and he said to his friend, "Why don't we fish out in the ocean?" And the other boy said, "Well, don't be stupid. This is a better way, because at the end of the day, we can tell everyone we caught a lot of fish." So I'll again, for those who have ears, let them hear. But that's I just, with my ADD, I like to get through the story as quickly as I can and then be able to unpack with questions. So let's see here. Josh, where would you like to go from here? I've got to pull up my chat.
Yeah. Just to introduce myself real quick. I realized that Luke is going to kick this off, but my name is my name is Josh Benningham, and I do a number of things. I lead a house church network in Orlando, but I also do some work part time with Brave Future, who of course owns and kind of puts on the Microchurch Conference. And so I just do a lot of facilitating, kind of bringing different things together like this. And so Steven also is in Orlando with me. We're good friends, and so it's an honor to have him here sharing his stories with us. He's also not going to directly promote it, but I really recommend you pick up his book, Keyholes, which he recently put out, which is actually a book of parables similar to the ones that he just shared with you. And I personally found it quite inspiring and have thought back on some of the illustrations that I was exposed to through the book. So, oh no, he's got a great mind, and I'm glad we have him on our team. So,
Thanks, Josh.
yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we can just open up the floor for general questions discussion. It seems like there's a number of questions already in the chat. Steven, can you see those in the chat?
Yeah, I just pulled it up, so I'm good to go here.
Yeah, what if you just kind of triage those yourself?
Okay.
I should say, okay, well, or I can help you. I can help
No,
you.
no, no. That's okay. That's okay. I'm right here. Steven, how would you recommend a church start discerning how to make a similar pivot to what you did at Castmember Church? Okay, not to sound cliche, but spend as much time with Jesus as possible. Because the more you spend with him in his word and in prayer, you're going to get his heart. But I would also say, spend time with lost people. Spend time with people that don't know him, because that's where his heart is you're going to start to feel a connection. But as far as if you're talking about moving a church, there's not enough time to talk about how to make a pivot like that in a format like this. At the end of our time together, I can give you my email is Steven with a V, Steven@castmemberchurch.com. I answer every email. So if you've got a question and you want to dive deeper into that, that's fine. But I would say you have to have a heart for it. You have to have a heart for it. And it has to start with the leadership. The leadership has to lean into that. And there are ways to do that. There are foolish ways to do it. We've done every one of them. So we failed forward in the process. So we can help based on our experience. Why does it seem like the church at large is failing or totally missing the focus on one-on-one discipleship, or confused small groups or men's ministries, et cetera? There's an easy answer, and there's a deeper answer. In Western Christianity, we don't want discipleship to be messy. And the thing is when you are investing in people, they're going to disappoint you. It is going to be inconvenient. This is a take up your cross and follow me every day. And every day I'm interrupted, no matter how. And so I've learned to actually make room in my schedule. I know there will be interruptions, but that is where Jesus is most often present. So we kind of like to categorize things. You've ever heard people talk about their prayer life or my church life or my work life. We have these categories and we don't want them to touch. We may not admit that, but that's the Western tendency. And but the thing is, it's all a part of life. It's all one big, I like to say it's one big beautiful mess. And I wish people would embrace, I wish we would embrace that, because that's when the church shines most brightly, is when that mess, as convoluted as it is, it's beautiful because it's people doing real life with a real savior. So you see here, I was on my way to my friend's house and it came to me that I was thinking too big for the ministry that God has called me to. That's awesome. If I was going to be successful, I needed to think in terms of a few and really plug into them. This would in turn allow them to plug into others. What's your take on that? Bullseye. It's that's it. I firmly believe every person should have one person they're discipling, one person that doesn't know Jesus, that they're invested in. I love to encourage people to dream small. God will take care of the big. You dream small. Think personal. Think how you can invest in someone and model that for someone, and learn how to do that. And then God will multiply. That's where the fruit comes in. So yes, everything, we like to say at Castmember Church, our dinner tables are the sanctuaries where we gather. If the dinner table, I'm sorry, I'm pointing at my dinner table. You can't tell, but that's what I'm doing. If your dinner table gets too full, it's time to start another night for meals or something, whatever. But think small, because some of Jesus' best conversations, and I know that sounds weird to say it, but some of his best conversations took place in one-on-ones and dinners. And the more we look at Jesus, goes back to, if you wanted to start moving your church in that direction, is don't look at Sunday as the end all, the focus. Make it the dinner table, make it the coffee shop, make it wherever, but think in the small. I'm so proud of you. I think that's awesome that you're doing that. Let me see here. Could you explain what kingdom planting looks like on a practical level? Yes, absolutely. I'm going to oversimplify it, but that's what I do. It is, I'm going to use my wife as an example. My wife works for Disney. She works in World Showcase in Epcot. And so she is always, first of all, she's the person everyone trusts the most, because she will not gossip. She will not participate. Wherever there's three people, there will be gossip. Well, imagine a company of 72,000 just in Orlando, or in a department of 30 or 300. Lucia is the most trustworthy person in her area. So people know they can talk to her. And she is always encouraging. We always talk about how it's not love or truth. It is love and truth as one. Jesus is love. Jesus is the truth. It's one thing. And so Lucy lives that out every day, encouraging the young people that she works with. Even if Jesus never comes up, this is something that I really believe. Even if Jesus never comes up, remember, he indwells in you through the Holy Spirit. So what you say, even if you are just helping somebody to do their job, there's more power on that than there is someone else who's doing the very same thing that doesn't have Jesus. But kingdom planting it's like you are dropping seeds. Think of the parable of the sower. The parable of the sower, if you look at the sower was not strategic. The sower was throwing seeds into hard ground, into where the weeds were, the seeds were going everywhere. But the fertile ground is where the seeds, finally the seeds became mature. So what happens is, as we plant the kingdom, a lot of those seeds aren't going to make it. But the ones that do will be the ones that Jesus reveals. We only get cast members here at Disney for about a year. So we have to be we're very deliberate about kingdom planting. I would say another way of kingdom planting is inviting people over to dinner, inviting them over, have fun. Don't have an agenda. Don't have well, we're going to talk about this tonight. We're going to listen to their hearts, listen to what's going on in their lives, and encourage them. And there's nothing wrong with it. I think it's great when you say, it's really funny. The Bible says something about this, and you mention it. And that may be it. That may be the only thing, 30 second, but that is a seed. And that could be the seed, the very seed that will take root. But I could give you other examples. 3 things that we always do: express value, form trust, and continually plant Jesus in simple ways. And because a person is not going to be open to Jesus until they know they can trust you. And they're not going to trust you until they know you value them. That's all kingdom planting. And it may take years, but there's joy in the journey. Enjoy the journey. So, let me see here. What's this? It's highly costly to invest yourself in personal disciple making. Far easier to. Oh yeah. I like the fact that you put safer in quotes. Jesus didn't call us to safety. When you're living for the Lord, you're putting yourself out there. Kingdom planting sometimes gets messy, and it's certainly not safe. But yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. We do like safety. What are the P's? Parable. Oh, thanks for asking. Parables, principles, paradoxes, patterns, and practices. A couple of years ago, I decided to just for 1 year read only the Gospels, just the Gospels. No, I love Paul. I love Scripture, but I wanted to spend a year with Jesus. And I started recognizing the way he communicated the kingdom in a way that not many of us communicate it today. And I realized those 5 P's, I'll say it again: parables, principles, paradoxes, patterns, and practices. Those transcend every demographic. Whether I'm talking to someone from Japan or someone in Paris or someone in Africa, the way Jesus communicated the kingdom transcends it all. And I think it's a beautiful thing to cultivate. That's what we try to cultivate in our cast members. I want them to become very good storytellers. I want them to be able to recognize principles. Our church is principle based. We don't have a pathway because each person has a unique journey towards Jesus. So we use principles that guide them so that for as long as we have them, they're able to use those for the rest of their life.
Steven, let me direct you down to just because of the sake of time and whatnot. Let me direct you down to this question here. Colin and Denny asked you. You mentioned a good number of folks in your community return home to Europe. In what ways are you seeing they continue planting the kingdom back home? Like what's some of the overflow multiplication that you guys are seeing in terms of like what people are going back to Europe and doing?
Well, here's the interesting thing that we have. When people return home, that doesn't mean they return home as a follower of Jesus. It means that they're just moving toward Jesus. So a couple of things happen. The reason I have this set up here is because I live on Zoom. Zoom is I'm constantly connecting with cast members that I'm still investing in over there. I have to. That's where most of them are. So some of them are still on a journey towards Jesus. We have a few that have actually a few of them have ended up in other churches in Europe. I mean, we have to be okay with that. Yeah, that's just the way it is. But those that want to stay connected with us, our hope is that they're going to start using the same things that we did, the dinner table, just becoming the best friend you can to the people you work with. So this is always, because we're always in flux. I wish I had better outcome stories to share with you. but because of the way we're structured, we're just on a ship that just kind of keeps moving forward. And but those people that are over there that stay in touch with us, they're starting to get it. They're starting to live into that. Relationships become much more important to them. Even if they don't follow Jesus, they're modeling what we're doing. They're inviting their fellow cast members over to dinner. They're building community. So in a sense, if you think about it, the bowl is being formed. It's just that it hasn't been poured into yet to where
Right.
it serves its purpose. So
Do you have any like standout cool stories, examples of people who have come to faith who then have kind of been able to then do that with
yeah,
everyone else?
yeah. I want to be careful of mentioning names or anything
Yeah, of course.
because we're kind of like an underground church, even though we have a website. Disney, we kind of have
You're
to be
listening.
careful. Yeah, exactly. So in any case, yeah, we have one young lady who we met early on. She did a 1-year program here, came back and did another program 2 years later, another 1-year program, became part of our family, has came to every dinner, every coffee and all, and now she has an influential role back in Europe, and she's actually having I'm trying to say this without revealing what she's doing. She's having a kingdom influence in where she's at, and it's a very influential part of the entertainment industry, where she's able to have a discipling presence there. That's one of my favorite wins. I wish I could tell you. I'm so proud of her. I am so proud of her. And I wish I could tell you more details, but in an email, I could do that, but something that's being recorded, I have to be careful.
Awesome. I think that's related somewhat to the next question on here, which is how are you developing leaders to form new micros? Like, and because obviously there's the natural impact of, you're modeling this, people come to faith, they go and do it with others. But like in terms of like that kind of ongoing development, coaching, training, or even just multiplying what you guys are doing
Mm-hmm.
here in Orlando in terms of building out, sustainable leadership for that. Like
Mm-hmm.
what's that look like for you guys?
Twofold. First of all, because we're kingdom planting. That's our emphasis, is kingdom planting. So we're not as worried about the church. I know our name is Castmember Church. That's because when we first got here, that's what we called it. So we're much more on the missional side of things, just simply planting seeds wherever we can. We've made mistakes in the past where we've had people come on board that come from outside, that want to be a part of what we're doing, and then they start bringing church paradigms, more attractional church paradigms in, and so it never worked. It never really worked. Our desire is to raise up people here that could continue the leadership. The problem with that is where we are right now, they all go home. They all go back to Europe. So it's much more of a missional. Here's where they hear the gospel. Here's where they see the gospel modeled, but they may not come to faith until they're back in Europe. And so we just now have a couple that is coming on board that actually understand and love the micro, love that. So they're going to be actually starting their own kingdom expressions. We're not going to bring them under our umbrella. We're going to equip them to be the kingdom at Disney. So we see ourselves more as releasing other ministries to become whatever it is Jesus wants to do with them. So we're about empowering leaders, but not trying to keep it under the umbrella of Castmember Church. Does that make sense, Josh? Is that okay? So we want to release people not to be Castmember Church, but to be whatever God has called them to be at Disney. Did I lose you?
Sorry, actually, my screen, my boxes were fritzing.
Oh,
Um, yeah, no, that's great.
I hope that helps. I hope that
No, it
helps.
is super helpful. Yeah, we got a couple other questions here. So typically, we started this thing at 1:30. We'll cut it off here in about,
Mhm.
10 minutes or so. So the next question on here, how do you encourage people in your church to use their gifts to build the kingdom outside their church
Mhm.
versus building their church? It kind of sounds like that. I mean, that's really your whole model
That
is
is. Yeah.
is
Yeah.
just it's like in a lot of ways you're not building much. You're kind of like impacting, influencing, sending.
Yeah. Think about it. Think of the
Yeah.
parable of the sower. That's what, we're scattering this, we're scattering the seeds. We do pay attention to where we look at each person who responds, their capacity. But we start, um, we want every cast member who works for Disney is uniquely gifted. So we're going to help them even before they come to know Jesus. That's one of our ways of expressing value. We like to sit down. We have people that will sit down with them and help them with their resume or
Mhm.
CV in Europe. And that's a great way of expressing value by saying, oh my gosh, look at how you've been designed. This is incredible. You are the most, do you see who you are in this? Do you see who God has designed you to be? This is incredible. And so speaking value into them is one way. That's kind of a front door ministry that we have. We have a great reputation for resume development. Um, and Disney even likes us for that. And then the way of forming trust is simply being available and being real. If we want people to open up with us, if we cast members want other cast members to open up with them, they need to be real about their own vulnerabilities, their own fractures and failures. Nobody, nobody has their act together. Nobody. Jesus is the one that holds us together. Jesus is the one who transforms us. So the more honest we are about our fractures and failures, the more they're going to lean into us and trust us. And that creates fertile ground for planting Jesus. It's not rocket science. It's just relational.
Awesome. Well, I'm not seeing too many other questions on here.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, last call, I guess, as far as anyone else having anything they want to ask Steven. You can also catch him at the Microchurch Conference, so
Mhm.
you'll be there.
Yeah, I'm talking about. In fact, a couple of you kind of mentioned this. I'm going to be talking about moving your church from a consumer mindset to a adventure of kingdom living mindset. So, how do you
Yeah,
move your church from consumer to kingdom living?
yeah,
I love that. That's going to be fun to talk about.
yeah, Steven. One thing I really love about you in general, but also your model, because obviously in a real sense you're a very specialized ministry.
Mhm.
Like you're niched
Mhm.
in a place that's very dissimilar from a lot of the places that the rest of us are.
Mhm.
I don't know. Maybe someone else here is embedded in a theme park, but I doubt it. And so what I like about a lot of your prescriptions is that you don't. I mean, you're not like you're trying to give principles that other people can extrapolate. To figuring out like what does it look like for us to be embedded, to really figure out how to reach the people in our context. And you've done that. I mean, you guys have super engineered a way through God's grace to effectively reach people in your context, which is a very nuanced and difficult context, highly transient,
Mhm.
extremely post-Christian, international, right? Constrained by the laws of like a company. But you guys have kind of found out how to fit there in such a way where you're accomplishing the goal. And I just think
Mhm.
that kind of like hard work at contextualization is what a lot of us need to do, right? Rather than just
Mhm.
plug and playing a model, we need to like get on our knees between us and God and figure out like what's it going to look like to build the kingdom, to grow the kingdom,
Mhm.
to plant the kingdom, where we are. So I love that piece of it.
Well, thanks, Josh. If you could, truth be told, it is very niche here, but everything we do, it ultimately comes down to human beings. And so they may share the DNA of Disney, but the way we communicate with like I was using earlier, a cast member in Paris, or a cast member in Croatia, or a cast member in Anaheim. Uh, it's still going to be the same thing. It's going to be, are we being Jesus? Are we
Mhm.
being Jesus? Are we meeting people in their brokenness? Are we sitting with them in their messes? Are we willing to be that light at the end of the tunnel that leads them out of darkness? Those are universal, and I think
Yeah,
it's just dressed up differently at Disney. It has a little more pixie dust, maybe, but the truth be told, it's just being Jesus to the broken
for
world
sure.
around us.
How about, okay, two more good questions came in. So let's try to make these our last two.
Okay.
Give us like a minute and a half on each of these, if you would, Stephen. First, what are some challenges you faced in your model?
Um, well, realizing that there's no model. It's Simon Sinek said something very, very interesting a few months ago. Scale breaks things. When you try
Sure.
to scale something, it loses whatever it was that made it unique in the first place.
Yeah.
So I would say one of the hardest things that we've had to do is let go of our own preferences, let go of our own. We need to see what Jesus is doing and lean into that.
Mm.
And that's hard. I mean, I've been doing this for 14 years and I'm still shedding the skin of my old church ways.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that point. Scale breaks things, which
Yeah.
is important because m most of us should be looking to scale what we're doing, but we need to not be naive about the impact of scale, right?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
good.
Exactly.
Um, okay,
Last question.
last one. Can you talk about some of the small ways you plant Jesus around the dinner table without feeling mechanical? I mean, what I'm
Mhm.
really thinking, what I'm really taking this question to ask is like, and like you're bringing people around the dinner table,
Mhm.
you're not just trying to like vaguely love people. You do want to
Mhm.
talk about Jesus, right?
Mhm.
In
Mhm.
propositional terms. And so like, is there any tips you have for how to do that in a way that's natural?
Absolutely. I mean, first of all, the world is. I've noticed that the generation now, the 20-something generation, is more open spiritually than I've ever seen in my life. I mean, we don't have to hide our faith behind a veil. They're open. You mentioned church, and they're like, "Oh, I've never been to a church before. That sounds really cool." So don't 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 let a voice in your head say that you've got to be slick about this. Um, Inviting people over for dinner, getting to know them. There's something intimate about eating together. Um, Even in our own home, we'll do something like a question of the night that we know ultimately Jesus has an answer for. Something, maybe we talk about gossip, or maybe we talk about purpose, or there are three things that people never run out of talking about: identity, purpose, and belonging. Who am I? Why am I here? Where do I fit in? Any questions around those lead us back to Jesus, because we were designed to be known by him, to have a purpose in him, and to belong in a community where he is Lord. So understanding that when you're having dinner with people, you can start, just pay attention, just turn on your ears and listen for identity questions, or purpose questions, or belonging questions. Stories people start revealing about themselves, about, I had a horrible childhood, or I had this happen to me, or I'm so excited about. Listen for those things. Those are clues, and Jesus will give you something. But it's always great to have a question of the evening. What gives you hope? What gives you hope? Or what do you think your purpose in life is? I promise you'll get an hour and a half conversation out of those questions alone. But it doesn't have to be. Young people could smell an agenda a long way away. So just be natural. Just be natural. Be interested in them. He'll lead you.
Good stuff, man. Well, hey, it's only a few minutes till, so I think we should probably close it up. But this was great. Super grateful, Stephen.